So again, we're dealing with the question, when will you change? Now, the problem is we often excuse ourselves too easily when we talk about the subject of changing. We say things like, well, you know, a little bit of pornography isn't so bad, maybe between a husband and wife, and I'm somewhat of a womanizer, but it's not that bad, and I lie sometimes when it's convenient, you know, and I got a little anger issue going on, but it's not that bad. The problem with us is we excuse ourselves to blame easily. And from God's perspective, these are character flaws. The things I just mentioned, they are character flaws that cannot be given or granted eternal life. Why? Well, because you'd make a mess of things. You'd make a mess of things. So why is total transformation so important? I'm trying to answer this question here. Now, I don't know, I'm a little bit reluctant to say what I'm about to say. But there may be things that God can learn from experience. You know, we like to think God knows it all. God knows, you know, who I'm going to marry, when I'm going to die, and how I'm going to die, and God knows it all. We like to think that, and it's like a superficial God that knows everything. You know, He knows everything. A fatalistic, God that knows everything. That's sort of the God that a lot of people worship. And yet, there's a verse in Hebrews 5 and verse 8 that says, though he were a son, yet learn he obedience by the things which he suffered. So here was Christ in the flesh, God in the flesh, and he was able to learn, get this, things by the things that he suffered. He learned obedience by the things that he suffered. Now what I'm saying is this. There was a time when these beings were created, that is the angels, the spirit immortal beings, without the character test coming first. In other words, he didn't test them first. These beings that he had created immortal. The character test didn't come first. And I take it that God would never again repeat this experience. In other words, a third of these angels rebelled. They were free moral agents. They could choose to do the wrong thing, and they did. So from that point, the character test had to come first. And this is where you and I come in at. We are created mortal, subject to death. And if we fail the character test, we can be put out of our misery. Yeah. So this is the difference between, you know, immortal beings like the angels and we human beings which are mortal, subject to death. But for us, the character test has to come first. So we're asking, how do we get to the point where where we become like God? God can look at something that is right and wrong and choose to do the right thing. You know, you are not truly free unless you are free to do the wrong thing. True freedom always involves two opposing choices, opposite choices. Now again, I know we don't like that. Sometimes we say, well, you know, I wish it was easier. Okay, you want easier? Maybe you should have been a cow or a dog or whatever. It is tough. It is tough, but it is something that is possible for you to do, to choose to do the right thing. And I'm going to explain to some degree how you can do that. So the character test had to come first. And this is what I call, when a person is truly called of God, they enter in the salvation room process. And it is a process that is overseen by God the Father, Christ the Son, maybe the 24 elders as they discuss you and what's going on in your life and your salvation and the character building process and whether you pass or fail those character tests.